A, a cool wildlife thing?
Yeah, I want you to tell our listeners something cool about wildlife because this is the Wildlife Wire. And if we're going to talk about hot topics, I wanted you to share something hot about wildlife.
Oh, well, I mean, we're entering one of my favorite times of the year,
I
which is,
love that it zooms in on you each time we do this.
I
Sorry,
know.
continue.
Yeah, I love that this time of year because we're coming up on baby season. Well, some species already have babies, but everyone else is going to have babies on the land, and they're just so much fun. There's nothing that can brighten a day easier than seeing like a little deer or a bison, any of those critters with a case of the zoomies. So
Oh,
I
I love a baby bison bouncing around.
oh my God, they're the best. Yeah, so
Well,
that's
I
my little tidbit of there's so many different reasons to love each part of the year, and I cut you off. But that's the thing that I look forward to most at this time.
It's fine, Mark. As a woman, I understand that is my job to let you go first. So,
Hey,
anything else you want to add to that?
no, that's it. I mean, I have equal ground as a man right now, and in the industry that we work in, I'm very much outnumbered.
Yes, women do a lot of the nonprofit labor. But I digress. Want to hear my cool wildlife thing?
Please,
Are you are you ready?
I'm super ready.
Guess what I saw?
A moose.
Well, I saw a moose, but guess what else I saw that's back? They're
Hmm.
back.
Burrowing owls are coming back here on the plains. What did you see?
I saw a bear.
Ooh.
And he was taking a little trot down a path by the lake. And so bears are back. Everyone be bear aware. Lock up your food, your garbage, all of the things. Said bear did break into my friend's car because often we do not lock our cars in this rural area. And we are reminding everyone now, lock your cars because the bears can open the doors and get in. And they are very hungry right now. So we did get him on video. He's a really cool little kind of cinnamon colored black bear, and he did break into a car, but that was our own fault, and we persist nonetheless in our coexistence with wildlife.
Yeah, that's interesting that you said lock your cars because there was a bear bill that was heard in the Colorado House Agricultural Committee on Monday, and uh, one of the representatives on the committee, Rep. Lukens, she's up in Steamboat, and she's like, "We don't lock our cars because of people. We lock our cars because of bears."
It's it's true. This is a true thing that you need to do in bear country. And luckily, the bear just took a couple pieces of beef jerky and went on his way and didn't kind of dig up the seats or anything. So good stuff there. So that is a fact. Bears are out. Do you want to hear some non-facts today? Because I think we're going to talk about misinformation.
Yeah, it's no more facts here on out.
We're gonna clear the air with some facts, I think. I've seen misinformation really proliferate through a lot of the wildlife work we do, especially when we're working on carnivores. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about it from a campaign perspective and how it can change the outcome of different wildlife campaigns. And I thought we could start with a really excellent Substack article that Dr. Rebecca Niemiec from Colorado State University wrote all about ballot box biology. Have you heard of it?
Ah, these people always go in to the ballot box instead of trusting the experts.
Oh gosh, we'll get into the experts too, but I think that, one of the things we've seen a lot with campaigns, and both of us worked on the Mountain Lion campaign, and what Dr. Niemek did was she studied people's reactions to the campaign and why the campaign had, we lost. We're big fat losers on this campaign, and she really looked into, what informed voters' decisions and why did they choose to vote no when Colorado, as far as polling goes, the values seem to be aligned with the campaign. And the Substack does this cool thing where she's surveyed like hundreds of people. She's talking to folks like, why did you vote no? Are you afraid of mountain lions? That was not why they voted no. They voted no because of ballot box biology. And that is a claim that really came to popularity around the time that wolves were reintroduced by the ballot in Colorado. And what we saw was it really took agency away from the public and said, hey, you're doing a bad thing when you vote on wildlife because we already have an agency that does all of this great science and they make the science decisions for us. And we should trust the experts in this. And if there was a reason to change it, the experts would do it. What she found too was interesting, and that this ballot box biology and trust the experts component really influenced voters that were more liberal leaning because it appealed to their ideas and values around fairness and all of that good stuff. And I think that it's really, really important for folks to understand that ballot box biology is a persistent myth to spread misinformation about wildlife campaigns. And how do you think that worked in our campaign, Mark?
I think it was really effective. And what's really interesting to me and also concerning is that currently, like, it's confined to wildlife, that kind of slogan.
Yeah.
But if we were to extrapolate that type of language out to any other issue ever voted on through a ballot initiative, then there would never be a ballot initiative because there is some agency that is the state expert or the federal expert, local expert. And so why is it that, if it has to do with oil and gas or water or anything with the justice system, that doesn't appear as a misinformation campaign, but it does for wildlife? How are wildlife treated differently than any other issue that people vote on?
Yeah, and I think one of those components, right, is the urban-rural divide, where rural voters, some of them definitely started using that after wolves were reintroduced. And saying that repeatedly to more urban voters made them question their choices on a personal level too, right? It really served to feed that kind of culture war narrative by a lot of folks. And I think that's the concerning part too, is that in a lot of ways, there isn't a huge urban rural divide. We've got people that voted for wolves across the state, right? And we had people that were volunteering on the cats campaign in every district around Colorado that were super passionate about protecting mountain lions and bobcats. But what we've allowed to proliferate is these kind of myths that it was ballot box biology and the urban voters are doing this to rural voters. So again, it appeals to that kind of element of fairness. And I think it's really concerning that until we really start talking to voters on how wildlife is actually managed, we are really we're disempowering them. We're silencing people that care about wildlife by using the term ballot box biology, right? And silencing for who, you might ask? Who are we silencing for? Go ahead, Mark. I'll let you take a stab at it.
Silencing the majority.
Yes, we are silencing the majority, often in favor of a minority who prioritize consumptive use. And that's not to say that those folks shouldn't have a voice. I believe everyone should have a voice in wildlife management. But it's a little bit of a workaround to tell other people that their value system doesn't belong in this wildlife management structure. And I think that it's disingenuous in that there are values being put through wildlife management all of the time. And so what I wanted to talk about in trusting the experts is how those values kind of play out in wildlife management. So when we say trust the experts, who are we talking about?
A very narrowly defined group of experts with uh, that are working for an agency versus any other scientist or folks knowledgeable on on the specific subject. Those are not considered experts within that context.
Correct. And I think that, what we saw when Colorado State University did that larger study, that human values study, where they compared state agency values of staff and compared hunting, registered licensed hunters' values and compared values of the public, we found that agency staff was aligned with the more traditional values and with all of those folks that want to continue to hunt, fish, trap. And so they have natural allies with state employees. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the issue is, to the exclusion of whom? To the exclusion of what values? And when we say trust the experts, and we are only referring to agency staff and not to outside scientists, and we know agency management plans are not peer reviewed, then I think that we're cutting wildlife short,
Well, and
and that concerns me.
yeah, and something like wildlife, where in Colorado, wildlife are in the public trust. They are preserved and enhanced for all Coloradans and the visitors of the state. Um, so while I also don't have an issue with some or the majority of the staff of our agency or any other tending to also be a hunter or trapper or fisher, like great. But their defined mission goes beyond those groups.
Right. And I think the North American model even speaks to the value of the public trust, right? And it's important that all groups are included. And that's people that I might not agree with on either end of the spectrum, right? So it could be everyone from a animal rights activist who's a vegan that lives downtown that never goes into the wilderness to a houndsman that may be out there every single day. But both of those people deserve a voice in wildlife because it should be managed in the public trust. And I think what we've often tried to do is get people to talk more in the radical middle. And I think that as advocates, we often aren't the best people to do that. I hope that state agencies start doing that more, right? The agencies should be trying to bring us to some conclusions in the middle. And I think that's a concerning part. And I think the other piece that most folks don't know is when we say trust the experts, most decisions on wildlife management are made by wildlife commissions or a board of directors in each state. Those commissioners or directors are politically appointed generally. They're not voted on by the public. It's not a democratic process, except for the governor will appoint certain people to a commission. It causes some issues with pendulum swings, right? Where we'll see a state like Montana go full war on wolves, with a change of a governor, things can get crazy. We've seen that with Utah too lately, with some of their mountain lion management activities, just with the change in politics and what they've done with mountain lions there.
And
And then we've
coyotes.
seen,
they have a
And coyotes,
bounties on coyotes
coyotes
now.
everywhere, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, but they're like they're really pushing bounties now,
Yeah.
and yeah, the swings. If more of the radical middle was heard and participated, we would save ourselves all of these big swings. You know,
We definitely would, and I often get frustrated, where I've got friends that are hunters or ranchers that agree with a lot of my same conservation ethics around carnivores, but they don't speak up. And I'm like, you guys have to show up. You have to speak up because this is a conversation for all of us. And the more people in the middle engage, I think the better it is for everybody, right? Because we can kind of find a way to come to some solutions that are workable. And I think the other piece too with these commissions and boards is that often they are required by state statute to represent certain consumptive interests. So in Colorado, for example, 6 of our 11 seats go to consumptive interest groups. In most states, they'll divide it half by urban and rural. In Washington, half of the commission appointees can come from the west side of the Cascades, and half must come from the east side. So they set it up in such a way where rural voices are definitely heard and consumptive uses are definitely heard, but we're not doing as much to include the broader public who lives across the state.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I do want to go a little bit back, as far as agencies and like specifically ours being inclusive to different groups, like CBW does a great job like with snowmobilers and hikers and mountain bikers and so there's lots of inclusion with those groups, but then the issue is like they tend to just be involved in mountain biking, or in climbing or whatever it is, and then wildlife is kind of owned more by the consumptive user, so because groups are participating, individuals with different interests are participating, they're not all participating in the issue of wildlife.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And again, like I think that each agency that I've worked within, they've got really great programs for volunteers to plug in. And they'll have all sorts of different conservation measures that we don't necessarily talk about all of the time because as advocates, we're constantly trying to push things forward for carnivores. But carnivores are the toughest thing to change. And those policies tend to be the most entrenched. And I don't know the best way for our voices to be included in policy outcomes. It's like the seats at the table are very constructed in such a way where if they decide to change a policy in any state, the first thing they usually do is a stakeholder group. But the state itself picks who sits on that stakeholder group. And then they'll report out, but the state itself picks who's running the stakeholder group. The state itself picks who's writing the report. And then the state presents the report. So a lot of that dialogue is then put through a state's values lens. And I think state agencies just can't claim neutrality. I think owning our values is so important. And if we own those upfront, as staffers, as advocates, and as individuals, then we can have real conversations about the policy. But I think I fear that we're not owning the values across the board when we make policy decisions, and instead we state the policy decisions are science-based.
Yes.
That's my diatribe on that.
Yes. And even in the,
So,
I have, we've had these discussions before, and I am always kind of seeing multiple points of view, but like you brought up working groups, in the Furbear working group that I was on, half were advocates that were non-consumptive, half were ranchers, trappers, hunters, and I, it's not a fair breakdown as far as the percentage of the group goes, uh, and representation. I do feel at the same time that having, in the case of like trapping, there would be not even a whole person there if we did it correct,
Right.
to actual users. But at the same time, I do find value in having at least a couple or handful of folks to be able to work through their own um, value system and beliefs about how policy should be reflected. I know, like, no matter what I would be in, if I was the sole voice, I would know, like, oh, I missed X, Y, and Z. Had someone else been there, it would have triggered me, or they could have said it, and that would have fleshed itself out. So I do understand the value in having at least a few voices from each group. Uh, but as far as how it actually represents values of all stakeholders, it isn't a one to one, you know, straight down the middle, 50 uh, participating and not participating.
Right. I think it's interesting in those groups, and granted that this is an activity that, hunters and trappers participate in. And so they certainly feel connected to it in one certain way. But it's interesting to know that 95% of Colorado does not hunt. And yet the group was split 50-50. And yet the recommendations were to change nothing at the end of that. I think that it's an exercise in futility when we engage these groups. We don't have them reflect the public, and then we change nothing, even with robust input from both groups. And I think that there were certainly, you guys got this cool Venn diagram of where there was overlap and things that you guys both cared about. And there weren't even policy recommendations made based on the overlapping points. And I don't know why that continues, but it does. And I think it's important for the public to know that when we engage in ballot initiatives or when we engage in rulemaking, it's often because we've tried every other way
Oh, I thought it's because
for
it was
years.
easiest.
For years. And, we still aren't getting a fair shake at things. And I think that that's important because the public does have agency, and I want them to feel empowered to engage in the process and to engage in wildlife management writ large. Wildlife doesn't just belong to one subgroup of people, it belongs to all of us. And I want everyone to be heard. So that's my trip. What about ballot box biology? Is it true?
No, but you know what? It is being used. Yeah, I didn't look at the results, but yesterday, at the title board hearing here in Colorado, there were three ballot initiatives up to get their titles set on uh, the right to hunt, fish, and trap. Uh, every every game species, uh, they would be required to allow hunting of them unless they were endangered or otherwise protected, or like a non-game animal. And I mean, I have lots of concerns about that, but how is that not then ballot box biology if we're saying we have to hunt them or allow hunting of them, even if the science says maybe we should back off a little bit? They're not endangered now, but maybe we should kind of not hunt them and let them
Yeah.
recover, or not hunt them in an area. Does that then break a constitutional amendment if we say you can hunt them here but not there within the state. There's really, it hurts my head sometimes when we get these things pushed at us, and then when it is switched around, it's like, oh, no, 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 that's not ballot box biology.
No, 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 nothing to see here. Well, and I think that's the part too, I think about with when we say trust the experts, what we're really saying is trust the people that are killing wildlife, that enjoy killing wildlife. We're not saying, oh, the biologists within CPW, trust those guys. Those guys are doing work way out in the field. They're not making policy recommendations. All of that goes through the values lens and is shaped by people that are within the agency that are often hunters. And I think that that's important for folks to know. And again, not saying that's wrong as someone who hunts myself, not saying it's wrong, but I am saying that we should ask why that is and why the rest of the public's values don't come into play.
Yes.
So I think another thing I wanted to talk about, while you flagged this really for misinformation, was when we have an issue we might be working on, and instead of the people who are actually opposed taking the mantle to fight against our issue, they loop in like a credible third party and make it their problem. So it looks like you're challenging something like water rights in my case with beavers. And I think that that's a that's another sticky wicket for the the public to go through on this information. In that, when we ran the wildfire beaver bill, we had met with water providers over and over again to really write them out of the bill. However, some of those water providers are close with predator hunters and fur trappers, and some of those lobbyists still took to oppose the bill, even though we'd gotten language to write them out and said that this could impact water rights. Um, and to me, that is one of the tough parts about politics, right? Where you've conducted outreach and you're really working to get at a narrow solution for an issue. And then all of a sudden, out of left field, you've got another group saying, oh, this could cause problems for us, or oh, this is a real issue, or oh, we're being impacted, even though you've done all the legwork to not impact them or include them. And I think I mean, to me, that's politics and how politics often works. But I think it also makes claims by certain subsets of hunters and trappers more credible too.
Yeah, yeah, and the water issue, you know, we're in like a major drought here, and so what is like the first thing that happens is all of the front range then is like, okay, you can only water outdoor watering twice a week. Front range, you really got to focus on how to tighten up your water consumption. But that's only about 10% of the water consumption in the state. About 90% of the water consumption in Colorado goes to agriculture. And are those same kinds of restrictions being applied to 9 out of 10 uses for water? And so there's assignment of blame there on one particular group that isn't warranted. Meanwhile, it's status quo for the ones that are actually making an impact.
Yeah. Yeah. And you want to know who opposed our beaver bill that was shocking to me? Are you ready?
The beavers.
Yeah, they showed up. They're like, we benefit from hunting and drowning. Leave us alone. No, trout unlimited. And as an angler, beavers make excellent trout habitat. I have volunteered on many a Trout Unlimited project where we're planting willows and doing all of the things that would happen naturally if beavers were there. And for some reason, that nonprofit decided to listen to the whole slippery slope, the end of all hunting, fishing, and trapping argument and link up with some of the more, I would say, to the left flank hunting and trapping groups. And I think that when things get that polarized, it's definitely to me a warning sign on how do we start fixing this with those groups. I I have been disappointed having been part of Trout Unlimited and having been part of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers to see both of those groups rather than really advocating for conservation and public lands start to jump on board this whole it's us against them. This is anti-hunting narrative when really this is a let's talk about public lands. Let's work on conservation issues together. Let's get beavers back where they belong. All of those things are really important, and I think that the misinformation piece of anything that's around conservation of carnivores is just a slippery slope to end all hunting and trapping,
Which
has
is
really brought.
that's another huge misinformation campaign, right? It's like
Go ahead, Mark. Tell me when you want to end all hunting and trapping. Is it right now?
Tuesday. I'm busy. Wednesday is when I want to get to that. Yeah, no, it's a deflection of the issue at hand, and
Right.
no one should be voting on. Well, I'm okay with this, but because someone said they're going to then do that, and that, I can't vote on the thing that is actually important to change. Like, again, that kind of logic, it, it so is anyone going to legalize cocaine and heroin in Colorado because marijuana and psilocybin are are you know getting relaxed or recreational use and that kind of thing? Like, no. Like,
Speak for yourself, Mark.
well, I mean, you can go for it. Like, you know, wildlife campaign manager with experience here to help. uh
Ballot box pharmaceuticals,
but but I I really doubt that there was more than a handful of people that were like, oh, I can't vote for marijuana to be legalized because I'm afraid that heroin will be next. That it was, do I want to legalize marijuana or not?
Yeah. Yeah, and I can see that, as a libertarian with a little L, obviously everything is an open door for personal rights, but I think that yeah, I think that with the anti-hunting agenda, that I've seen really perpetuated amongst hunting groups nationally, where if there's any one small change, for my legislation this year, it was, limiting the killing of beavers on public lands for recreational or commercial use. And then that's touted as that's the end of everything. They're going for your fishing, they're going for your deer, they're going for your elk. And I'm like, who is they? They is me? I don't
They is you.
they is me. And I think that we just don't, that's just not true. And I think that for both of us, we're supportive of subsistence-based hunting and we're supportive of sustainable practices. And we're willing to come to the table and negotiate with people whose value systems might be different than ours. But at this point in time, people with value systems different than ours have everything. So they have no incentive to negotiate. When we look at fur bearer policies, there is unlimited killing of fur bearers during the fur bearer season. So why would I want to say, oh, I'll do less? If my value system lays over here, there's not an incentive to negotiate. And then the agency reinforces that value system. So we're left outside of that decision-making model unless we pursue rulemaking or legislation or ballot initiatives. And to pursue one tiny change doesn't mean that we're trying to take away everything. It means that we're looking around us at a historic drought and have seen wildfires in our backyard and are really thinking, how do we sustain wildlife for future generations in a meaningful way? Because we can't keep doing what we've always doing. The world's different now. And I think those are the questions you and I are asking. I think that there's certainly a spectrum of values, right? Like my
Yeah.
values are different than, well, they're definitely different than like people for ethical treatment of animals values. There's a spectrum there.
Yeah. And I'm sure that we could find things within wildlife that we disagree on, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
So,
that's probably true, Mark.
and that is completely fine. And it's not a slippery slope. I kind of going through it in my head. It's more like they think it when people say slippery slope, they think it's like literally a slip and slide of allowing X slides down to everything else is going away when it's really like stairs. And at each step, you can choose to go on to the next one or not. They it's there are if someone was out there that was like, I want to end all hunting, they would have to say, and God, I hope no one takes this and makes a soundbite out of that. Uh,
Do you want to think about it before you say
but
it?
if they were on that train of thought, the fact is, okay, you limit, you prohibit commercial sell fur, and then you try to get all fur bearers to no hunting. Then you have to go to all small game, no hunting, and then you have to go to all big game, no. Like it is a there are many steps along the way to prevent that terrifying slippery slope from happening, and people will start to vote different ways. I'm okay with no commercial sale. I'm okay with this. I'm okay with that. I am not okay with taking away deer and elk hunting. So you, it's you're not going to get the same amount of people supporting you progress is what I call it, not a slippery slope. You're not going to get the same amount of people at the beginning of it as you would at the end supporting that same line of thinking.
Right. I think your staircase is the values spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And it allows you to consider things in the gray area.
And most
And I
people
would,
will end up on that middle
right,
few steps.
right. And I certainly am not taking a jump and a slip down the slide towards ending all hunting and trapping. And I say this over and over and over again. I would stand with every elk hunter and deer hunter and subsistence hunter in Colorado to protect their rights first for hunting those species that they rely on for food. And I think that, to say it's a slippery slope is again, it's making a blanket statement about something rather than engaging with the actual policy, which is on fur bearers, should we allow the commercial sale of Colorado's wild fur bearers pelts and parts, just the raw products that get exported? Should we allow that? Is that good for them? Is that good for wildlife? Is there science that supports that's good for wildlife? And I don't think that those questions have been answered. And I think it's important that we ask those questions and have real discussions around the policy rather than saying, Samantha Miller's an anti-hunter, this is a slippery slope, follow science-based wildlife management. those are all catchphrases. That's not engaging with the issue at hand. And I think those catchphrases, they proliferate and they become misinformation, right?
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
just take on a life of their own.
And by using things like a slippery slope, it's a it does two things for folks that are pushing that kind of messaging. One, it's a great fundraiser, right? So uh, I'm here now, and I will continue to be the person fighting I can't say every step of the way, every slip of the way, um, because it is very slippery and it's a slope. And it's also pulls people in to that have no connection with your fight, you know, but it brings the masses in to help back you up on your fight and having others take that fight on for you, because it is not a popular fight, even within other hunters uh, in your community, but you've convinced them, oh, but this might affect me in the future. So now I have to fight this other fight.
Yeah, that first step in your metaphor is a trap door, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're eating tofu and no idea what's going to happen next. And I'm hopeful. Again, my biggest hope would be that for hunters and anglers that do care about conservation, that they start bringing forward some of the stuff about management, that they start raising concerns as they're seeing them, because I've heard them from hunters directly. If we're not seeing as many bobcats or foxes, or the fact that, bobcat skins are at a high value right now, and that incentivizes all over the place people saying, go get your money, get your bobcats. And local extirpations matter. So I think that the more that we can leave that door open to for sensible changes to come from that community, I would welcome that and appreciate that discussion.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Um, I did want to shift you a little bit on like the actual decision makers within
Mhm.
wildlife, the commissioners, and I think for a long time, there's a lot of pushback, and I see now, you know, negative uh, social media post on specific commissioners a lot, and attacking because of their values alignment. And that was never a fight that really had to be fought before, because the governor appointed commissioners. If there was an outlier to the interest of the hunting and trapping community, there was there was not enough of them to make a difference. So it didn't matter, because everyone else was aligned with their value system, and when that alignment happens, hey, there's no problem. Like they're just doing their job as a commissioner. But as soon as that values alignment dynamic shifts, and more than just a one-off scenario, now it's a problem. Now we have people coming in with an agenda, as if people had never sat on a wildlife commission before with a set of values.
Well, we all have values. I think that that's the problem. We all have values, and I think that it's not the problem. I mean, it's just something we should talk about more frankly. And we do have, on the commission now, by statute, they still have to fulfill the majority of consumptive use mold. And I think that to attack people individually is never okay. And I think it's something that happens when your policy position is weak. And I would much prefer to discuss the policy than either make sweeping judgments or attack the person. And I think that what I've noticed this commission doing is starting to act like an oversight body. We have big game hunters on the commission. We have ranchers on the commission. We have fishing guides on the commission. We've got environmental lawyers on the commission. We have PhD scientists on the commission. And they're really taking their role seriously as an oversight body and having engaged discussions with the agency. And I think the agency's just not used to that. And so we see that rub of questions from people that are experts really in their own field and are serving as commissioners and the agency. And so I think it's important we have these conversations and hopefully it'll lead towards positive growth and conservation, you know?
Yeah, I agree because, like you said, everyone comes in with their own values. Are we wanting, are we pushing for AI commissions for the future? Is that is that the answer?
Whose
Because that's
value
the
system is plugged into the algorithm, Mark?
yeah. I mean, I don't understand how you could possibly have any person ever to serve in an appointed position anywhere for anything and not have them come in with a value system. I mean, look at the fights that we have for Supreme Court nominees, and we trust that they are going to deliberate and come up with their you know vote on an issue from a good place. But at the end of the day, so and so was appointed by this Republican, so and so was appointed by this Democrat, and you will always have a base of values in any decision ever made in human history.
Right. And sometimes you're a female Supreme Court justice and you are perfectly willing to take away the rights of every other female in the country. So life happens, Mark. Life happens.
Yeah, there you go. So, just work on getting the commissioners that don't align with your values. Pull one of those scenarios out, like do your work instead of just criticizing them because they're human.
Oh gosh. I really wanted to close this out though, because I know we've been having our high level philosophical debate about values and misinformation. Well, not debate, discussion. We're pretty aligned. We can debate things later. Um, but I think that, environmentalists, hunters, anglers, we all have a lot more in common than different. And I am concerned when voices on either end of the spectrum serve to divide us rather than pursue goals together. And I am committed to bridging that gap, and I know you are too. And I think that's something important that we should continue to do with both this podcast and our work.
Yeah, I agree. And when we have disagreements, that doesn't mean you have to hate someone, call them names, dox them, whatever. You can disagree with the issue and still be cordial or even friendly with the person. And we
Right.
talked about this earlier. Like I have an opposition lobbyist in a bill that I'm working on that we get along really well, and we are staunchly opposed to the bill, and that's fine. Like that makes it a lot easier because then we can say, hey, you, you, where do you stand on this? Just kind of, is this a path forward? Is that a path forward? But when there's so much anger and disdain, you can never ask like, hey, what if we tried this? Oh, no, why are you talking to me? Like why? That's not helpful and it's not
Yeah, and I
mature.
think that The labeling serves that purpose too, right? By labeling anyone who wants to make conservation changes as anti-hunter, that serves to drive a wedge between any of those conversations happening. And I've noticed even when I have a friend who is a master hunter, lifelong big game hunter, but not for carnivore hunting. And even when he started making choices or recommendations around that, he was called an anti-hunter too. And I've seen it happen over and over again. We have a good friend, Nick Jivak, who works with Sierra Club, who's been a lifelong hunter, and he advocates for wolves, and he's been called an anti-hunter. I think we should be able to have an array of values without labeling the other. And when you label the other, you're dehumanizing them too. And so I think that we just will continue to not engage in that rhetoric and dispel misconceptions and misinformation and be the fun, delightful people we are.
Yes, absolutely. The downside with doing without not labeling folks is then you can't humanize them. You can't you know, label them as an enemy and then attack. And so it takes some of not our tools, but some people's tools away from them when they're
Not a tool in the toolbox,
a
Mark.
tool, the tool, like because there are many folks that rely on that kind of of weaponization and enemy talk and all of this. I mean, look at our fearless leader for the our country right now. Uh, that it makes it a lot easier to say and do whatever you want when you dehumanize the opposition that you have on a particular issue.
Well, I am committed to treating you and everyone like a human, Mark, and we'll have to come back next week with a new fun topic for everyone to listen to us, really reflect on. I think we did some deep reflecting today, and I'm glad we could talk about misinformation and myths. And for anyone interested in more, I definitely recommend Dr. Rebecca Niemiec's Substack. It's been really interesting to see her discuss her research on there. And we'll be back next week with a new episode.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. All
Perfect.
right.
All right, Mark. Bye.
Bye.